Do you love creepypastas? Then you're in the right place. Every week, we bring you the most terrifying stories from the internet and beyond, and this week is no different. So, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our spine-chilling tales. The forest that breathes. Deep in the countryside, there was a forest that the villagers refused to enter after sunset. They said the trees whispered, and that the forest itself was alive. Travellers who ignored the warnings often vanished. There were even some people who claimed to have seen the spirits of those lost wanderers forever trapped within the woods, desperately searching for an exit. Some claimed to have heard their cries in the wind, or seen their faces peering through the trees. These stories may seem like mere superstition, but locals took them very seriously, and so avoided the woods after dark. One day, however, a man named Mark decided to test his mettle against the whisperwood. He was a hiker, one of those types who believed that nature wasn't something to be feared, but respected. He knew better than to trust a superstitious tale over common sense. He'd been hiking for weeks and needed a place to rest. The whisperwood was the closest campground, and he figured it would be a good place to stay for the night before moving on to his next destination. It was late in the fall. The leaves had turned colours and begun to drop. The forest floor was littered with brown and yellow and red, making for a picturesque view that Mark couldn't help but admire. As he set up his tent, he thought about how silly these stories really were. Was it really possible that a forest could come alive and swallow trespassers? It was almost laughable. As darkness began to fall, however, Mark noticed something was off. He heard no crickets or owls, no wind rustling through the trees. All was unnaturally silent. Even his own breathing echoed in his ears. It was then that he realised that the forest really was breathing. He felt the air around him pulse like a heartbeat, slow and steady. At first, it was barely noticeable, like the gentle rise and fall of a sleeping giant. But as the minutes passed, it grew stronger. Suddenly, he wasn't alone in the woods. Something else shared his campsite. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere. Mark felt a deep unease settle in his stomach. What had he gotten himself into? He tried to ignore it, telling himself it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But as the forest grew louder, he knew he had to do something. He stepped out of his tent and scanned the trees. The wind picked up, swirling fallen leaves around his feet. The forest was angry, and Mark was caught inside its domain. Then he heard it again, not a whisper, but his name being called. "Mark," it said, and the voice seemed to come from every tree at once. Startled, he spun around, searching for the source. "Mark," it called again, and he could have sworn he saw a face in the bark of a nearby tree. It was gone as quickly as it had appeared, but it left him shaken. He pulled out his flashlight and swept it across the trunks. They were all lined with eyes, hundreds of them staring back at him. Then the forest closed in, the trees pressing closer until he felt trapped, their branches intertwined overhead, blocking out the moon and stars. The forest was a living, breathing thing, and it wanted him out. He started to run, crashing through the underbrush, tripping over fallen logs. But no matter which path he took, the trees seemed to shift and reform, keeping him trapped in a never-ending maze. Their whispers followed him, growing louder, more insistent. "Leave! Go back! You're not welcome here!" He stumbled back to his tent, collapsing on the ground in a panic. It was clear he wasn't welcome in the whisperwood, and whatever was hiding in the trees wanted him gone. He could hear the pounding of his heart in his ears. The forest was breathing heavily now, like it was trying to inhale, to swallow him whole. Then the whispers changed. Stay forever. They were no longer trying to get him to leave. They wanted him to stay in the Whisperwood, to become part of it. But how? He was already in the middle of the forest. Where else could he go? That's when the roots came bursting from the ground. They wrapped around his legs, pulling him down. He screamed, thrashing wildly, trying to free himself from their grasp. But it was no use. The roots held him fast. He was stuck in the Whisperwood, and whatever lived there had found its new meal. And while Mark struggled against his leafy bonds, the whispers grew louder still. Feed the forest. Be one of us. With a final surge, the roots dragged him down into the soft earth. Mark's screams echoed through the trees, but the forest was hungry, and it wouldn't be denied its supper. It was only when the sky began to lighten with the approach of dawn that the whispers finally ceased. The forest fell silent, the breathing slowed, and the rustling of leaves gradually faded away. When the sun finally peeked through the trees, it revealed a forest floor undisturbed. The tent was gone, as was Mark. In fact, nothing seemed amiss. The forest looked as peaceful and inviting as any other, except for the strange patterns in the leaves that hinted at a struggle in the darkness. As the day wore on, hikers began to trickle in, curious about the isolated forest and the strange events that were said to have transpired there the night before. Among them was a young woman named Sarah. She had heard the story of Mark's disappearance and was eager to investigate. She searched the forest floor, hoping to find some sign of what had happened to him. She found his tent neatly folded, as if he had packed it up and left, but there was no sign of a struggle, and certainly no trace of the creature that was said to inhabit these woods. Yet, as she turned to leave, her gaze fell upon something strange. Carved into the trunk of a nearby tree was a face. It looked as though someone had taken a knife and painstakingly scratched out the details. The face was grotesque, twisted in a silent scream, and its eyes stared vacantly into the middle distance. Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. Could this be the face of the monster that had devoured Mark? Or was there something more sinister at play? The face seemed to mock her, daring her to try and escape the forest's clutches, and as she hurried away, she could have sworn she heard a voice whisper her name. This is one scary story that will keep you up at night. How about you? What do you think happened to Mark? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our terrifying tales. We've heard similar stories to this one before. People going into forests and never coming back out. I'm thinking things like the Hookman or the legend of the Jersey Devil. But we've never heard anything quite like this before. This is truly a story that will keep you up at night, wondering if there really are malevolent forces lurking in the woods, waiting to strike. But that's not all. We want to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever experienced anything similar? Maybe you've been hiking and heard voices in the trees, or maybe you've seen something strange in the woods and run for your life. Whatever it is, share your story with us in the comments. Who knows, maybe we'll feature your story in a future episode. But for now, it's time to wrap things up. So, don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our spine-chilling tales. Until next time, happy haunting.